The more I watch this year's safety class, the more I'm starting to like what I see, especially out of the talent in the first 3 to 4 rounds. The past couple of drafts, to me, haven't really been all that good at the safety position, let's face it. But this year, I think there are some players that can be had in the first 3 to 4 rounds that have some impact potential at the NFL level. And another one of those guys that kind of fits into that mold is Vonn Bell, 5'11", 200-pound junior from Ohio State, a former high recruit that now 3 years later you look at him and you say, hey, this is a guy that could be a playmaker at the back end of a defense at the NFL level. Now, in terms of Vonn Bell and what I like about him on film, I like his quickness. I like his short area quickness in particular. He's not the fastest guy. He's not a burner by any stretch of the imagination. I'll talk about that in a moment. But in terms of response quickness and initial and short area quickness, I think he has it in very, very good number. And I think he has enough of it that you would like out of a potential free safety at the NFL level. What I really like about him, though, in terms of his overall game is his physicality that he plays with and his tackling ability. And for a guy that's all of 200 pounds, he plays much bigger than that. He plays like he's 225, 230 pounds, if not even bigger. And he tackles like he is a very sure-handed, reliable tackler, if you want to call it that. Somebody that I feel very good about being that last line of defense where sometimes, yes, you want the guy that can make the big-time hit, but sometimes you just want the guy that's not going to get burnt by the huge play, that's not going to sit there and get shook out of his ankles, that's not going to have somebody run through his arm tackles. And Vonn Bell is a really solid tackler. Also, I look at his coverage skills, especially in the back end of a defense, and I think they're pretty good. I think he has really good ball skills as well. When you're looking for a free safety with center field ability and sideline to sideline range, you want a guy that could go make some plays on the ball, that can read the quarterback's eyes, that can not only read the quarterback's eyes, but then make those plays on the ball and force some turnovers, make some big plays happen. And Vonn Bell showed that ability to me with his overall range and with his ball skills and his awareness as well, that he could do that. I liked his awareness and his instincts for the position. Here's a guy that I thought was pretty good in terms of understanding where he needed to be, pretty good in terms of understanding what was coming and where the ball was going. I thought he did a pretty good job of that. And I also liked his propensity to show up in the big games. He had some big game, big-time performances. And, you know, sometimes you can sit there and say that is what it is, and sometimes it's a product of this, or it just is what it is, and it doesn't mean a whole lot. But, you know, when you're trying to disseminate between all these different prospects, sometimes you want those guys that you feel like will step up the biggest when the spotlight is the brightest. And Vonn Bell's played in a lot of big games at Ohio State the past couple of years and played very well in some of those big games in the past couple of years. He was a real impact player, a real difference maker. That's why so many people, I think, are so high on his draft stock for the NFL level. Now, I maybe am not quite as high on Vonn Bell as others in terms of a safety, and there are a few reasons why. First, when I look at his weaknesses, let's go through them. Speed. You know, for a guy that's all of 200 pounds, you know, like I said, I like his good initial and short area quickness, but I have some real concerns about his ability to turn and run in coverage, because not only does he lack that big-time recovery speed or that big-time deep speed, I think he's very stiff in the hips. So turning and running and covering as a free safety, having to come up and defend guys out of the slot, I don't think is a role that he would be very well suited for, at least at this point at the NFL level. And I have some concerns if you stick him outside and you put him on an island, you know, is he a guy that's going to be susceptible to giving up the deep ball? Because while his initial quickness is good, once you get to 15, 20, 25 yards, he could start to lose a step against some of the faster outside wide receivers at the NFL level and even the slot guys as well. His lack of speed that shows up on film to me, especially deep and recovery speed, you know, is a concern to me. Also his size. Now, like I mentioned, I love the fact that he plays as physical as he does and he's as sure of a tackler as he does. But, you know, I have some concerns about a guy that small being that physical. And I have concerns about whether or not he'd be able to defend tight ends effectively. I have some concerns about just how effective he would be playing in the box at the NFL level. I think sometimes his play recognition speed can be a little off. I talked about his general awareness I thought was pretty good, but at times it can seem like he's just a little bit slow to react, and he's a little bit slow to recognize what is coming. And, you know, sometimes that could burn him, sometimes it does not, but it is something he's going to have to get better at the NFL level. Now, I talked about his big game performances, and I love that about him. A clutch guy that came up biggest when the spotlight was the brightest. But you would like to see him be a little bit more consistent across the board. while he played big in some big games, in the not so big games, he didn't always play so well. He just didn't seem to bring the same fire and the same intensity, which is a concern because you could argue at the NFL level that every game is of critical importance. It's similar to how it should be, frankly, at the college level because you're playing an even more condensed season, and a lot of times you feel like you have to go undefeated in order to get a shot at the national championship playoff. You want a guy that's going to bring that effort week in and week out. And there were times that I just thought he should have been better against lesser opponents than he was. He should have been more of an impact player more consistently than he actually was. And I also have some concerns about whether or not he's really a free safety at the NFL level or he's a strong safety at the NFL level. I think he has the physicality and tackling ability and nose for run support of a strong safety, but he has the size and initial quickness and ball skills and cover skills, especially zone cover skills, more so of a free safety. But I don't think he's a dynamic enough athlete to where I feel fully confident about him truly being able to be a sideline-to-sideline center fielder. And then in terms of a strong safety, again, a 200-pound strong safety, I don't know. And maybe when you look at Vonn Bell, it's going to be one of those things where his position's always kind of fluid at the NFL level. Maybe it's not one defined role. And I think overall that's going to be the best fit for Vonn Bell, is where he could play sometimes as a strong safety, sometimes as a free safety. Locking him into one box at one position or the other might not be the right way to go. I think he's a good prospect. Like I said, the things I like about him the most are his ball skills, the physicality that he plays with for the size that he has, and his propensity for showing up in the big games. But the lack of speed is concerning to me. That lack of speed and that lack of man coverage ability, I think, because and part of that stiffness in the hips, really has me concerned about just how high his upside is at the NFL level. I do think Vonn Bell is a good safety prospect, and I think he is ultimately a starting NFL safety, like I said, especially if he's in a situation or a role where he could be utilized in a variety of different ways, sometimes at the free, sometimes at the strong. Some teams like to use their safeties kind of interchangeably, and that's where I think he would be best suited for. In terms of a prospect, though, I just think there are other safeties that are better in this class. I really do. I think Jalen Ramsey is far superior as is Carl Joseph. I like Darian Thompson more. But Vonn Bell, to me, like I said, is still the type of day two prospect that you like because he has starter potential at the NFL level. And that's what he is. I think he's a day two pick, probably a late round two to early to mid round three type of talent that gets taken somewhere in that range, and somewhere in his rookie year or by year two for sure ends up being a nice, at least solid, productive starter at the NFL level. I'm just not sure that his upside is quite as big as some of the other safeties in this class.